Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Some new stunning numbers on how much the migrant crisis is costing our country, not just financially, but also due to many recent migrant crimes. And joining us now to talk about all of this and so much more is one of the best in the business, Mark Morgan, a senior law enforcement analyst. He's also the former commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Mark, great to have you here.
Rita, thanks for having me.
What do you make of some of these new, really stunning numbers? They're coming out of New York City, that the migrant crisis is costing the Big Apple alone, $5 billion so far, and it could go up to $10 billion by next year. That is a staggering amount.
It is, and it should be a wake-up call for everybody in this country. But here's the thing, Rita. This isn't shocking to me. It's as expected. We've been talking about this. You and I have been talking about it for sure for 3.5 years. And let's take a step back. FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, they did a pretty in-depth study that says that illegal immigration, on the average, year over year, costs U.S. taxpayers about $150 billion across the United States. The chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Mark Green, during his impeachment inquiry into Secretary Mayorkas, he said that the first 3.5 years of this administration has cost taxpayers $500 billion. That's with a T, Rita. And so, although New York gets a lot of attention for obvious reasons, this is not just about New York. This is impacting every state in this country, and U.S. taxpayers are footing the bill. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime, and it's not free. Every single day, we have illegal aliens coming across our border, and they are actually rewarded for that illegal activity. They're provided free health care, free education, free food, free housing, free subsistence. The list goes on and on and on, and the U.S. taxpayers are paying 100% of this bill.
There's also a story that 1 in 5 New York City hotels has migrants. Yep. I mean, what does that mean for New York City? What does that mean for tourists?
That's exactly right. And so the average cost, I just read a story, is about $300 a night for the hotel. $300. I know that there are people listening to your show right now, Rita, that they couldn't afford a $300 a night hotel to take their family on a vacation, but yet we're paying $300 a night for just countless illegal aliens to stay in New York. As you said, what happens is then entities are displaced. We've heard stories where veterans are displaced. We've heard stories where Americans that are looking for shelter, that are homeless, are displaced, all to house illegal aliens. And it's the same thing with medical facilities. There are hospitals, especially in the border regions, where there's no room at the inn, where an American citizen is coming to get a medical treatment, and the hospital says, we're full. And why are they full? Because illegal aliens are occupying all the bed space and all the resources from that hospital, and American citizens are having to go elsewhere. I mean, Rita, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about the financial burden and the displacement of American citizens, all at the benefit of illegal aliens. I mean, at what point are we going to use a common sense America first strategy? I'm not, I'm a compassionate guy, but first we have to take care of our own. And also we should be enforcing the law.
Well, and it also comes at a time where they are saying, boy, police departments are stretched thin.
Yep.
Education, as you talked about, homeless veterans. It makes you wonder, where are our priorities?
That's right. And Rita, you just mentioned crime. You can't talk about crime without talking about the open borders. Every single day, we are apprehending murderers, rapists, pedophiles, aggravated felons, and gang members. In the first 3.5 years, Border Patrol has apprehended over 55,000 criminals. That's a 99% increase from the number of criminals that they apprehended from FY17 to FY20 under the Trump administration combined. And that's just who we apprehend. Think about the 2 million gotaways. We have untold number of murderers, rapists, pedophiles, and aggravated felons. And before somebody says, oh, you're being hyperbolic, Mark, well, let's look at the next stat, ICE. In the same 3.5 years, ICE has arrested 163,000 criminal illegal aliens in the United States, of which 4,700 of them were murderers and 8,000 were gang members. I mean, this is absurd. We're literally, because of this administration has turned their back on the American people and turned their back on their constitutional duty to secure, defend, and protect our border, they are literally jeopardizing every aspect of our nation's economic, safety, and national security.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
Plan on flying? In order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID. Learn how to get your real ID today at tsa.gov/real ID or visit your local DMV.
You brought up, Mark Morgan, 2 million gotaways. Who are these gotaways? I mean, we have really no idea. Explain who they are, because they are often the worst of the worst, because many people feel they can just still sort of slip through the system. These folks are evading the system, so you really have to wonder who they are.
Rita, that's exactly right. That's why I love talking to you. You don't have to be a border security expert to understand the chaos and lawlessness that's going on. You just have to use common sense. And think about it. The overwhelming majority of those illegally entering our borders, they sit down and actually wait for Border Patrol. Why? Because they know they're going to be processed and released into the United States, never be heard from again. So why do you have a gotaway? Well, we got away because that's where the criminals are, right? That's where the drug traffickers are. That's where the murderers and the rapists and the pedophiles and potential national security threats definitely live. So as you said, 2 million, and that's just known gotaways. Most Border Patrol agents will tell you that is underreported by 20 to 40%. So think about that. I mean, it's unbelievable how many either national security threats or criminals that got away that we know nothing about. But then also, think about this. Even the almost 11 million total nationwide encounters that we've received under this administration, 11 million from 180 different countries. The reality is there's a big lie going out there. They say, well, we vet everyone we encounter, right, and to make sure they're not a threat. That's a lie. It's impossible. It's not happening. Many of these countries we do not have diplomatic relationships with. We are getting no information about their criminal background from their home country. The only databases that we're able to check are our own U.S. criminal databases. Well, if somebody's never been in the United States before and we have no ability to identify what their criminal background is in their country, we don't know anything about them, but we're still releasing the United States. We're literally jeopardizing our safety and national security. And Rita, I know I'm going long. I'll finish with this. We've had countless examples where we've encountered an illegal alien, we released them into the country, and then they murdered, raped, or claimed an American victim, and then later we learned out that they had a lengthy criminal history from their home country.
You know, you brought up exactly where I was thinking of. There's been this recent case. It's a Massachusetts illegal who went to a migrant hotel. He said he was going to be in New Jersey, ends up in a hotel in Massachusetts, and rapes this young girl and gets out. I think it was $500 bond. Now he is finally, I believe, back behind bars. But how can this happen? Why is this happening?
This is happening because this administration absolutely has put their quest for perpetual political power in front of public safety and our national security. There's no other way around it. That's just the bottom line. And make no mistake, Vice President Harris, that individual you just described, Vice President Harris, believes in the policies that allow that individual to be encountered, released, picked up, and after he committed this crime, and then released back into the city. So we have policies that are releasing individuals that we have no idea what their criminal background is. And then we have cities and states that are sanctuary cities and states. And even after someone that's here illegally commits another heinous crime, they refuse to work with ICE, and they release them back in the cities to reoffend and claim another victim. And make no mistake, Vice President Harris fully supports every one of those policies that allowed that to happen. And the last thing I'll say about this, common sense will tell you that an individual that we encounter on a Friday is not a good citizen, and then miraculously over the weekend by Monday morning turns into a rapist. That's not how it works. I guarantee you that individual had a lengthy criminal record from his home country and was known by law enforcement as being a violent felon.
Right, and they're just not sharing it with us because why would they? They're happy that person is getting out of their country, right?
Exactly.
You know, we talked about how they're getting here, Mark Morgan. One of the ways is these flights, these parole flights, which now, by the way, is, of course, under investigation because there were fraud, evidence of fraud, of the way it was abused, undoubtedly. Explain how that was sort of another mechanism, getting away with coming not the southern border, walking across or running across, but they were trying to fly them in.
Yeah, big shell game, Rita, big shell game. I'm glad you brought this up. So right now they're talking about, the numbers are down, right? Well, it's a big lie. They're just not being honest with American people. They're taking one aspect of the multi-layered crisis that we have, the southern border, only in between the ports of entry. Well, and say, those numbers are down. Well, here's why they're down. Because of the CBP-1 app. What they've done is they've just rerouted. They've convinced people, well, hey, look, if you stop illegally entering in between the ports of entry, what we'll let you do is you can get online and fill out the CBP-1 app, and then we're going to let you fly to one of 45 interior airports in the United States, and we'll release you then, never to be heard from again. And they're claiming victory. It's a big lie. It's a big shell game. And from day one, we said, those of us who know it, we've been here, we've done this, we said this is going to be fraught with fraud. And, of course, from day one, they started people – you just had to be born for your country of origin, one of those four countries. Well, we found out that people were living in Brazil. They'd lived in Brazil for a decade. They hadn't been in Nicaragua or Cuba for over a decade, but yet they were still able to use the CBP-1 process to fly into the United States. And then we said, look, sponsors, it's going to be absolutely abused. And so now we're getting where, there's been a couple of thousand sponsors have sponsored, tens of thousands of illegal aliens coming in. The Social Security numbers and same information is used for tens of thousands of individuals coming in on CBP-1 app. It's a complete mess. It's being completely abused, and that's why they temporarily halted the program. But we knew it. We anticipated this. We called it. We warned them, and they just ignored it.
They just ignored it. And thank goodness, by the way, as you know all too well in, say, Texas, Governor Abbott there is holding the line with buoys. He's been winning a lot of the legal fights, and it just shows that if you really have somebody who cares on the front lines, you can make a difference, right, Mark?
You can. Look, and I've been a full proponent. Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, those two gentlemen have done more to secure, protect, and defend the border than any other state in this union. They have absolutely filled the void of this administration's failure to uphold their constitutional duty to do just that. Operation Hold the Line, from a law enforcement perspective, has been incredible since March of 21. I mean, they've apprehended, I think, close to 500,000 illegal aliens, enough lethal doses of fentanyl to kill every single American in this country, drugs, weapons, currency, you name it. And most importantly, what they've done is that they've helped to put the cartels back on their heels. Right? It's kind of like if you're going to steal a car and you go to a parking lot, are you going to go and go to try to find a car that's locked to get in, or are you going to find the car that's unlocked? And that's kind of what they've done here. They made it more difficult for the cartels to operate, so they're going to other areas where it's easier, where they don't have so much resistance. And they have done exactly what we did in the Trump administration, and they plan a strategy of infrastructure, technology, and personnel. And when you do that, it works.
You know, you talked about the cartels. They have become so sophisticated. Talk about just what they have in terms of the drones and in terms of the other techniques that they use to get across.
The way I phrase it, another great question, and a lot of people just don't understand this. They think the Mexican cartels just operate in Mexico. That's not true. They actually operate almost, I think, in every state in the United States, as well as other countries in the Western Hemisphere. My analogy is they can rival most Fortune 500 companies on their business flexibility, resiliency, and able to adjust their tactics, techniques, and procedures to overcome the law enforcement efforts that we produce. Every single time that we encounter and kind of overcome one of their tactics, they're easily able to shift because they're so sophisticated. They really are a paramilitary organization, and their level of sophistication is look. I think that their level of sophistication would rival some small countries' armies. And they're definitely the same style and capabilities as any terrorist organization that we're worried about as well in this country. And that's why I'm a full proponent. We have to fundamentally change how we go after the cartels. If we're ultimately going to be successful in securing our border and stopping the death and destruction coming across from Mexico, we're going to have to change our tactics and how we go after the cartels.
And what would you suggest?
I hope everybody listening does this. Just research this. A.G. Barr, he did an op-ed last year, and I subscribe to what he does. It's Plan Colombia, where we use U.S. military in coordination with Mexico, not boots in the sand and not boots on the ground in Mexico, but special operations, kinetic, surgical precision operations to go to the heart of the cartels and strike them, go after the meth labs, go after the routes, go after the leaders. We need to go after them with the same level of commitment and whole government approach that we do terrorist organizations. Whether we call them and name them that, there's pros and cons, but we need to go after them just like we do terrorist organizations. Because the traditional criminal prosecutorial authority approach that we've used over the past 30 years, Rita, it hasn't worked. The only thing that's happened in the past 30 years is the cartels have gotten more powerful, more influential, and financially they're better off than they were 30 years ago. So we have to change our approach. If we're ultimately going to secure our borders and stop the death and destruction coming across, we have to change how we go after the cartels.
And also, the gangs are also obviously a big part of it. One of the big gangs is Tren de Aragua that's in the U.S. As you know, we know that a number of people who've committed crimes have been associated with them. The other issue is, too, is we're hearing, Mark Morgan, that these gangs are now starting. There's some people who are reporting that they are running some of the migrant shelters, sort of like how the gangs run the prisons, if you will, in many ways. Are you seeing that, and are you hearing that?
Absolutely. Look, I talk to law enforcement still throughout the country. I was just talking to some of my law enforcement counterparts in Texas, and they say that they're seeing a significant problem. It's not just in New York. It's not just in Chicago and other cities. It's spreading across. And what's frustrating for me is we are literally both ignoring and repeating history, because in the late 90s and early 2000s, what did we see transform in this country? MS-13. Exactly the same way. From El Salvador, they came over, and because of our open borders, because the government was slow to respond, we actually facilitated and allowed the proliferation of the most prolific, violent transnational gang, MS-13, to take root in this country. And that was over 20 years ago, and MS-13 is still a real, viable national threat to our country. And now we're seeing the same thing happen with the Venezuelan TDA gang. The same thing is happening. We're literally going to have MS-13 2.0 that's taken root in our country right now, and I believe it's too late. I think it's already taken root because of this administration's open border policies, and they're completely ignoring what's happening right now.
You brought up earlier the contrast between the Trump administration policies and the current administration. We are hearing now Kamala Harris saying, she's going to be tough on the border. What do you say when you hear that? Because obviously a lot of the things she's done in the past don't coincide with those statements.
That's right. Look, if it wasn't so serious, I'd literally just laugh out loud and just shake my head and walk away. But it can't, because it's serious. Let's keep in mind, let's not focus on whether what her title was or whether she cackles all the time. I don't care about the personality stuff, Rita. Let's talk about her position on policy. And how do we find that out? Because she won't give an interview. Let's go with her own words. And so since she's been a state prosecutor in California, she's been a senator, she was a presidential candidate before and as vice president, let's walk down what her own words, her own position on policy. 1, she wants to defund the police. 2, she wants to decriminalize illegal immigration. The next thing she wants to get rid of all detention facilities throughout the United States. 2, she's been a full supporter of sanctuary cities. She also wants to abolish ICE. She actually referred to the men and women of ICE as equivalent of the KKK. And as she's been vice president, she's been a full supporter and defender of ending every single effective border security policy we had in place. She supported stopping the wall construction, which acts as an effective deterrent and force multiplier. She ended the Remain in Mexico program, which ended catch and release. When they did that, that's what it was one of the biggest catalysts to begin the chaos and lawlessness we've had for the past 3 years. She was one of during her first presidential run, she was one of the first person to put her hand in the air to support free education and free health care for illegal aliens. And she just picked a vice president candidate that is more liberal on border security than she is. At the end of the day, she stopped wall construction, she ended the Remain in Mexico program, and she supports widespread amnesty rather than widespread removal. That's the contrast.
You know, you talked about her running mate, Tim Walz. It was interesting because, of course, in the finals, it seemed like it was maybe going to be Mark Kelly from Arizona, a border state. Obviously, Governor Shapiro also was in the mix there in Pennsylvania. She goes with Tim Walz, who, as you aptly describe here, Mark, is more progressive and regressive in so many ways on the border. I mean, he also marched. It was an anti-ICE march, abolish ICE march. Yep. How concerned are you that it's not just her on the ticket, but it's her and this person who, as you aptly say, is even more concerning on border security?
Exactly. So, Rita, again, let's put personalities aside and let's just do what you just did. Let's talk about their position on policy. And how do we do that? Their own words and their own actions. As you said, he marched in an abolish anti-ICE movement, right? He gave driver's license, signed a bill that gives driver's license to all illegal aliens. He is a proponent of giving free tuition to all illegal aliens. And he's been trying very hard to make his state a sanctuary state. So look at their own words and their own stance on the policies. And what you're going to get with a Harris-Walz ticket is you're not going to have a sanctuary city. You're not going to have a sanctuary state. You're going to have two people that are going to be proponents of making the United States a sanctuary country.
How concerning is this all to you as someone who understands the complexity at the border all too well, Mark Morgan?
I think that, look, I don't want to be hyperbolic, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy here, but here's the reality, because I do know this. Every single day, our nation's safety and national security are being eroded because we are allowing drugs to pour in, killing Americans. We're allowing criminals to come in to victimize more Americans every single day, and we are allowing national security threats in. So the issue is that if or when those threats come, those threats are already here. And if Vice President Harris becomes President Harris, you're going to see the chaos and lawless here not only continue, but you're going to see it happen on steroids. And our country will never be able to recover from 4 more years of this.
Wow, that is a very powerful warning. And just as we talked about where we started at the cost, not just financially, but just to the country as a whole in so many ways. And to think about it on steroids is just shocking. It really, really is. And it's eye-opening, and it's so important to talk about. Everybody, be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. Mark Morgan, thank you. This is such an important discussion and so timely. And we so appreciate your time on this issue.
You bet. Thanks, Rita.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.